Hello everybody, today we'll be looking at what used to be a duck engine that I will be modifying a little bit. Took his face off, he will be getting a fresh coat of paint pretty soon here. What I'm going to do is replace the motor with a Hyper 2. I like the C-cell battery engines with this motor design just because they're easier to work with for swapping out a motor. So first we have to take a few screws out. Right on the bottom, just Phillips. This one's a little bit older. Back when most of the screws are Phillips, they did not have the triangle tipped ones quite yet. Just take those out. This lifts right up. So on the top here, you'll notice that you can see through the plastic case. There was another piece that was glued on here. I kind of just pried that up so you can split that case apart. I'll just glue that back on when I'm done. Have some tabs here. One on the side, one on the top. You can kind of, depending on when this was manufactured and who put it together, there are different amounts of glue that was used to seal the case. You just have to kind of cut through that. You got a couple of screws to take out. And whenever you take apart one of these motor units, you always gotta watch out, make sure you don't lose your switch if you're not handy with putting stuff like that back together. Sometimes it can be kind of difficult. Using a pocket knife to split this open probably isn't the best idea. Alright, so if you take a look, you see the gears, the motor. Next to my right thumb is a weight. On the ends of these wires for the terminals, you'll notice that all it is looped into the connectors on the motor. So you gotta be careful. You gotta make sure to get them looped in the correct way. I don't know how well you can see that for the other terminal. That just slides out. So you have the gear that's on the motor itself. You have to take this off the original shaft and put it on the new motor. I'll be using a Hyper 2. So we'll get the new one opened up. These motors are fairly common. There's several different types for the mini four-wheel drive type race vehicles. I happen to choose the Hyper 2 because it was the one I got the best deal on at the time. About $5 per motor after shipping. So we will very carefully pry that gear up. And it's on the floor. Okay. So here is the original motor next to the Hyper 2. As you can see, it's pretty much identical, except it's red on the end. So we'll take this, make sure you put it back on the same way, the same spacing between the end of the gear and the motor. You have to make sure that it lines up so it will catch the rest of the gears for the drive unit. And the tricky part will be getting this first one hooked back in on the terminal of the new motor. You can kind of pry these out a little bit, make it easier. And this one's giving me a little bit of trouble. Okay, so I'm holding it in place with my thumb. I will line this back up the same way the previous motor was. If you have watched my other videos, I have one with a Tomy D51. It's also model S28. Has the same type of a drive unit. I did the same modification. So now that that is back in place, it sits in there like so. Okay, so for the next part, we have to take this wire here and loop it inside that terminal. And then very carefully just kind of, guess that wasn't too careful of me. Make sure to hold on to the weights just so they don't fall out like it just did for me. So then you line up all the shafts for the gears and whatnot, kind of push it together, goes back together fairly easily. I do like doing these motor swaps just because I don't have to use my soldering iron. It likes to set off my smoke alarms. If they would go back to making trains with these motor units, that'd be great, but I doubt they will. So I get the coupler back in there, get these screws back in place. When time does allow for it, I do plan on filling the top and bottom hole here, and then I will be having LED lights put in the left and right hole. So hopefully that'll turn out fairly neat. So we'll just see if this will work. A little bit snappier. I replaced the tires on here for better traction. So we will go ahead and just put this back together. The only thing left to do is for me to reattach this just to support the motor casing a little better. So that is a quick motor swap for a C-cell battery. The date on this duck is 1996, so it is a little bit older, which would explain the C battery and that particular motor unit. With the Hyperdash 2, they say proper voltage between 2.4 and 3. Switching this over to 3 volt is a good possibility. Typical RPM output is 17,200 to 21,200 revolutions per minute, and a current consumption of 1.6 to 3.0 amps. So that is a quick motor swap for Duck. I will be repainting him. If anybody can give me any suggestions for a paint job, I'm open for suggestions. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.